the First Row Sports Show. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook.
Once again to the sideline. Batted up. Oh, God! Stokely down the sideline. Can they catch him?
With your host, Darnell Duff.
Oh, Wade, what a play! Wow.
Welcome to the First Row Sports Show, May 16th. Wednesday, May 16th. Today is the day someone is picking up a brand new Keurig machine and 324 pack of K-Cups. All you had to do was like and share the First Row Sports Show Facebook page. We had about 29 people do so they're in the draw. If you didn't, well, check into the Facebook page later this month to find out what you could win in June. Now joined by Theo the Juggernaut Tutkaluk. Theo, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Double D. It's great to hear your voice. Finally, we get to do this thing. Beautiful weather here in Winnipeg. How's Dauphin?
Dauphin is beautiful. It's supposed to rain the next couple of days, but after all that's happened, I think we're good for some rain because it's been a little rough with all these fires going on. And I think a couple days ago there was 3 fires or something, so some rain won't hurt us at all.
I'll definitely agree with you on that. The cabin was kind of close to some spot fires out in the White Shaw this last week, so it was back and forth every couple of days making sure the cabin was still up. And Lord knows, and the farmers know, we could definitely use some rain, and I don't remember the last time we asked for rain. So let's get to it, buddy.
Well, you know what the Winnipeg Jets could use some rain tonight on the Vegas Golden Knights heading into Game 3 of the Western Conference Final. Heading into the series, a very intriguing series with all the intangibles. Hellebuck playing really well. Marc-Andre Fleury showing Pittsburgh that they made the wrong decision. Now, heading into Game 3 tonight, coming off a big Vegas Golden Knights win where Fleury just about had a shutout. Probably should have. It was a pretty bad goal that went in. Nonetheless, what do the Winnipeg Jets have to do tonight to get back home ice advantage and, take a 2-1 lead over the Golden Knights?
Well, first and foremost, Darnell, I think everybody and every reporter here that's covering the Western Conference Final will agree with us in stating that whoever scores the first goal in every game has the upper hand because it sets the tone for the rest of the defensive struggle either team has to play. I mean, if you look at this series alone, whoever scores the first one has won Game 1 and Game 2. And when you think about it, since Game 3 of the first round against the Minnesota Wild, the Winnipeg Jets have gone 1 win and 1 loss for the remainder of those games through second series and now going into this third series. So if we were to follow history and history were to repeat itself, it would say that the Winnipeg Jets have the upper hand, seeing how they are a great rebound team. Connor Hellebuck, like you said, has played fantastic hockey between the pipes, and he has been he hasn't lost a game since they've lost one prior to. So I think he's sitting almost 7 or 8-0 after coming off a loss. His goals against average is in the high 930s coming off a loss. And the Winnipeg Jets going into Las Vegas haven't had the best of success. So it will be one of those games, a little bit earlier start for them, a 6 o'clock start, 8 o'clock Central, considering they were used to those 8:30 Central starts in the last series, thanks to the media. It should be a really interesting game to watch, Darnell, because there's a lot of different intangibles that we haven't seen in a Western Conference Final thus far.
Now, you talk about stats, and I'm a stats guy. I love stats, and here's a 2-part question for you. Heading into this game, like you mentioned, the Winnipeg Jets played a couple of 8:30 starts, which is weird because you really don't see that. The media needed that, all that sorts of thing. And now you change to a 6 o'clock start, and then later this weekend, Winnipeg's actually going to play a 3 o'clock game. How much does that affect a player having to change from 8:30 to 6 to 3? Now, I know some people probably say, well, these are professional athletes. It shouldn't affect them at all. They're wrong. Sleeping patterns, morning skate, all those sorts of things, they have to change based on when you play. If you play at 8:30 at night, well, you're probably going to go skate a little bit later. If you play at 6, you'll skate earlier. If you play at 3 o'clock, who even knows if you're going to get that morning skate? And if you do, it's going to be really early. This affects players, no doubt about it. But also, we talk about, scoring first in this series. The team who scores first wins statistically in the first 2 games that happen. But what's been most surprising is the team who scores first, the opposite team in Game 1, Vegas, in Game 2, Winnipeg, they did not show up. You look at Game 1, Vegas, they gave up the first goal, and Winnipeg shoved it down their throat. They were up 3-0 really quickly. Vegas didn't really have anything for the first 15 minutes of the series. And then you look at Game 2, Winnipeg, they didn't score first, and they had no bounce back after Vegas opened the scoring. Like, what's up with these teams not having bounce backs, even if they don't score first?
Well, Darnell, I don't think it's necessarily a bounce back. Rather, it's the preparation that each team has on each other. And I think the game plans that are in effect when you look at a team that scores first, they're able to control the defensive play because now the team that's down one has to now score one. And the defensive organization, the chemistry, the game plan that other team has put together is in full effect. Now, game one, you have to consider that Winnipeg was probably playing on straight adrenaline that first 20 after defeating Nashville in Nashville. Las Vegas couldn't travel until they found out who the winner was in Game 7. So both teams were really traveling the same night or the same day back to Winnipeg or to Winnipeg. Game 2, exactly the same. I mean, Winnipeg plays in this quote-unquote fog after they've won a game in the first 15 to 20 minutes. And he called that only goal that Fleury led in, that Kyle Connor put in. I mean, that was the momentum changer for about 2 minutes until Las Vegas scored that third goal and went back up 3-1. And that really deflated the sails of the Winnipeg Jets in Game 2. I mean, you look at the game plan and the structure to which each plan, each game, each team puts a strategy together. Now, what happens in Game 3, I mean, whoever comes out those gates faster and stronger will ultimately, I think, win this game because they're going to have the upper hand. You look at that second game in Winnipeg, Darnell, a lot of weird bounces that didn't go Winnipeg's way. I mean, Jacob Trouba missed the net by 6 or 7 feet, and it caroms behind Fleury. Should Fleury back up into his net a little faster, that would have hit a stick or hit his skates and would have bounced in. The one that Shuffles put between the legs didn't have enough gas to get across the red line and was stopped by a defenseman. All these little bounces, all these little, unfortunate things that didn't go Winnipeg's way did so in Game 2. And you talk about the Las Vegas Knights were able to take advantage of those costly mistakes. And I call them emotional mistakes because when you play in front of your home crowd, you want to have that wonderful play. You want to be Superman all the time. You want to hear your crowd roar and cheer after a great play. And when it came down to that third goal, that 2-on-1, we praised Josh Morrissey and how well he plays. He is blocking shots with Trouba. They are leading the team with respectful blocks each game, day in, day out. But on a 2-on-1, Don Cherry said it best. You know to let the shooter be taken by the goalie, and you make sure that pass never comes across the ice. And what happened? Morrissey went to play Superman, missed the puck, missed the player. Pass comes across. Hellebuck is left to dry on an island. It becomes a 3-1 game. You eliminate those mistakes, the costly errors in the neutral zone, and changing at the right times. So I know this could have been a 1-1 game going into overtime.
Now,
and that could have been Game 2. Talk about the timing of things. Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, Queens of the Stone Age was supposed to play Sunday night at Bell MTS Place. Their concert is now moved to Saturday night. Now, teams play Friday night in Vegas. They travel Saturday and play Sunday afternoon thanks to NBC. There's also going to be that concert Saturday night, which means the hot heat will affect the ice level and the ice conditions Sunday afternoon. And why they couldn't postpone another 4 hours is beyond me, because ice conditions will play a major factor come Game 5.
Now, you talk about Josh Morrissey, and we praise him. Everybody's saying how good he's doing. But point blank, he makes a couple stupid mistakes every single game. Even if it's just one mistake, it seems that every single game, Josh Morrissey, you're talking about what mistake he made that led to an opponent goal. And you just mentioned what led to, the Vegas Knights goal. He can't continue to make those mistakes. I know he's a young guy. He's, people thought he would develop into the type of the player that he is now, maybe a little bit earlier. He took his time, and that's okay. But he can't afford to make the mistakes against the Vegas Golden Knights. Marchizzo, William Karlsson, they have a very good back end. And then you got Marc-Andre Fleury. And I think the consensus in this series, if you can beat Marc-Andre Fleury, the Winnipeg Jets, you're going to win this series. I just don't think Vegas can handle Winnipeg's offense. If they score 4 goals a game, Vegas isn't going to be able to score 4 goals a game. You look at Fleury's numbers, 168 goals against average, 4 shutouts, and a .945 save percentage. Everybody was saying after the second round, it's not sustainable. You saw in the Western Conference Final, Game 1, Fleury did not play very good, although I didn't think he played that horrible. I think Vegas just didn't come out like they wanted to. Game 2, Fleury was back to playing like Marc-Andre Fleury. If he continues to play like that for the rest of this series, he can not only steal this series once again, but he could find a way to steal the Stanley Cup. That's how good this guy has been.
He's well seasoned, no question about it, D. But, I mean, you have to agree, two different styles of goaltending between Fleury and Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck plays very great positional goaltending. He's very good with his rebounds. And it's always been marked that if he's able to see a shot and the Jets defense keeps the shots to the outside, he's going to save most of them. He was extremely vulnerable between the body and the arm when it came to the Nashville series because a lot of those goals that he was letting in were squeezing in between in those areas. Now, you look at Fleury's game in the first game, especially also in the second game, but he wasn't caught as much. Marc-Andre Fleury loves the poke check. He loves to put himself in a situation that if he sticks his stick out to make that poke check, he then also has to make a secondary or a rescue position save should he miss. And the Jets scored 3 goals in the first period in Game 1 because of his lack of positioning after the poke check. In the second game, a couple of poke checks went awry, and the Jets just weren't able to convert on the ill-positioned Fleury. He did make the saves. The puck just didn't get raised up high enough, and they didn't do a great job, like you said, coming out of the gates quickly. Now, if you look at the back end, you talk about George Morrissey. Morrissey has a great counter with Jacob Trouba. Same thing I say about why Toby Enstrom is still in the lineup. It's beyond me.
But then again, Jacob Trouba's also making mistakes at bad times.
And you're right. When they make them at the same time, that's when they both go minus on that shift. But when one makes the mistake and the other one covers it, or vice versa, they still end up with an even or a plus. I mean, Jacob Trouba has been given the green light to move ahead. Josh Morrissey is moving the puck ahead. Dustin Byfuglien has certainly been leading that role throughout the entire playoffs, and he's improved his game tremendously since Game 1 against Minnesota. So, I mean, for those 3 guys, and Tyler Myers, I mean, all 4 of them have said, listen, their coaching staff has probably said, listen, you've been given the green light, just don't be dumb about it. And I think for the 4 of them to move the puck and join the offensive position puts more pressure on the Vegas Golden Knights defense, because outside of Lucas Sbisa, and I don't think there's anybody else on that defensive side, last time I checked, McNabb, England, and the other 2 you can't mention because you don't remember who they are just basically utility defensemen playing in an outstanding defensive role because they're playing as a unit. They're playing together. They're playing smarter hockey, I think, since up until now, because they haven't played a team like the Jets. The Jets are fast. The Knights are fast. The Jets are bigger in the back six. They are causing more trouble, and they can cause more trouble on the defensive side of the Golden Knights. They just have to prove to do it.
Now, I think the winner of tonight's Game 3, 8 o'clock start here in Manitoba, not as late as 8:30, but still a pretty late start. I think the winner of tonight's game will go on to win this series. Will they win the Stanley Cup? I don't know, but I do believe the winner of tonight will go on to win the series. I won't say who I think is going to win tonight's game. I'll let you take the floor first. Who's going to take tonight's game, and what's going to be the difference? Like, who's going to be the X factor to give their respective team the win tonight?
Well, I'm going to say this. I mean, if you look at history, and like I said, it's repeated itself time and time again since midway through the first round, Winnipeg should have the upper hand. The amazing things are now that I have to say is that the Jets have done so well without seeing Patrick Laine scoring. I think he's only got 5 goals in the entire playoffs. And the fact that my boy, 27, Nick Ehlers, doesn't even have a single goal is beyond me. And these are 2 guys that were scoring in the 30s and 44 goals during the regular season.
Well, that's because you see depth players coming like Brandon Tanev. Where did this guy come from? We know he's a good player, but all of a sudden he's absolutely lighting up. He's getting in the offensive zone. I mean, you got so many guys who have so many great opportunities offensively that you don't have to rely on, Laine scoring every second goal. I mean, Mark Scheifele's he's been absolutely tearing it up, but the team that wins the Stanley Cup at the end of the season, you look at the roster down, a lot of people are scoring, not just 1 or 2. And that's what kind of, excites me about the Winnipeg Jets. They do have a lot of guys that can score. The Vegas Golden Knights, I don't think they have as many that can score other than Carlson, Marchizzo. Obviously, McNabb's had a good series. They do have some other players, but depth-wise, Winnipeg definitely has more players who can make a difference and score.
They are definitely a little bit more lethal from line 1 to line 4. I think the center spot for Winnipeg is the best so far, or the best left in the playoffs. And, I mean, we are a threat no matter who we put on the ice. And I think you talk about keys to the game. I think it's going to be, you're not going to be able to have that last line change. So play your players to win Game 3 and at least get a split, if not go 3-1 up in Vegas while you're playing these next 2 games. Because, I mean, if you go down 2-1, you've broken the cycle. We're now going into uncharted waters, and we won't know what to expect come Game 4.
Well, I know I'm going to be probably the most hated Manitoban tonight. I'd love to see the Winnipeg Jets win. I think Marc-Andre Fleury is going to come out. I think he's going to lock down the door, and I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to win 3-1 once again. I think Winnipeg's going to have 30-plus shots, but Fleury's going to come out. He's going to be the star stud. Hellebuck's going to play really good as well, but I'm taking the Vegas Golden Knights tonight, and if my prediction goes well, if they do win tonight, Vegas, they're going to go on and win this series and head to the Stanley Cup. What kind of story would that be? If the Vegas Golden Knights, in their first year of existence, they're playing for Lord Stanley? That would be incredible.
It'll be impressive, nonetheless. I mean, you consider, the draft system and how it was put together last year. A lot of people in Winnipeg compare it to how much they have it better, or how it's so much better now than it was in 1991 when the Lightning and the Senators joined the NHL. I mean, the draft process, the free agent process, the protection of players. I mean, you began this with the discussion about Andre Fleury being picked over Matty Murray. I mean, I don't know if Pittsburgh really had an option. I mean, you could only protect one goalie, and looking to the future, do you let go of somebody that has won you 2 Stanley Cups and has been proven as a playoff goaltender? Or do you look at the veteran guy that's been that team player that has sat on the bench the last 2 playoff runs and basically said, yeah, I'll fill in when I need to fill in? And, I mean, the relationships, the friendships, the chemistry. Marc-Andre Fleury really brings something to the Vegas Golden Knights that they needed to make sure that they were going to be protected for the long run. I mean, they've got a bunch of young players. They've looked. I mean, George McPhee has said from the beginning he wanted to pick players that would be potentially there for 3 to 7 years, not just there for the one and done. So, I mean, they've got the excitement in the veterans. They've got their players like their rookies and their younger players playing exceptionally well. I mean, Marchessault himself was probably the best pickup they could have had from the Golden Knights out of Carolina, because he was a guy that was a 30-plus goal scorer last year that helped Florida, and I think they won the playoffs. He was one of their best players throughout the regular season, too, so he was probably their best pickup. I mean, nobody expected Carlson to score 41 this year, and, I mean, their defense is pretty stellar with Fleury in the pipes, so I mean, you put that all together, A, B, and C, you know what, they've built a team that has an opportunity to do nothing that another team has done before in recent or any history.
Just quickly here, Theo, who's winning tonight? Winnipeg, Vegas, what's the score? Who gets the game winner for the respective team?
I think Winnipeg takes it 4-2 with an empty netter. Who gets the game winner? I'm going to say, Andrew Kopp or Adam Lowry. I mean, one of those hard-working guys is going to catch that first line off guard, and they're going to rip one past Fleury or maybe get a garbage goal in the front. But like I say, anything that crosses the red line is a goal to me. So I think that's going to be the deal right there.
A big win it would be if the Winnipeg Jets could get it. The First Row Sports Show brought to you by Pass the Pop, 215 Main Street North in Dauphin. They got everything you need. Stop in for a pop tonight before the game if you're in Dauphin. If not, look at the First Row Sports Show Facebook page and get in on the monthly draw, or Trivia Tuesday. We deliver right to your front door. Coming up after the break, the Toronto Blue Jays 12 runs against the New York Mets. J-Hap 2 hits. Yeah, that's weird. 2 weird things in Blue Jays land right now. That's coming up. You're listening to the First Row Sports Show.
You're listening to the First Row Sports Show, brought to you by Pass the Pop on 215 Main Street North in Dauphin. Whether you want pop, water, juice, or a sweet American chocolate bar, Pass the Pop has you covered. And if they don't have it in stock, they'll order it in. Check them out on Facebook at Pass the Pop Specialty Beverage Company, and don't forget, keep it locked to the First Row Sports Show for your chance to win the monthly draw. And don't forget about Trivia Tuesday, where you can win a $10 gift card to Pass the Pop or anywhere you'd like. More of the First Row Sports Show is coming up.
Welcome back to the First Row Sports Show. right here on YouTube. Check us out on SoundCloud, on Facebook, the First Row Sports Show Facebook page. Subscribe to us, like us. Stay tuned for future episodes. Tonight, it's Theo Tutkaluk. Theo, we're talking about the Toronto Blue Jays, now a 12-1 win over the New York Mets earlier this afternoon in the Apple City. Don't know if I expected that. J-Happ, 2 hits. He continues to be the best player on the mound for the Toronto Blue Jays this season. Now 5 wins. What has been the problem for the Toronto Blue Jays as of recently not winning ball games?
I think it's been, before last night's game, I think they had lost 6 or 7 series in a row. I mean, they're still sitting just above 500, which isn't too bad for the Blue Jays. I mean, when you consider last year, it took all the month of April for the boys and the boys of summer to hit 8 wins. But I mean, the key to this Blue Jays team is their offense. And unfortunately, Gibbons just can't get this team to play any bit of small ball. I mean, they've got great emotion. I love Solarte. I mean, great pickup in the offseason for him. Not the greatest batting average, but you see his emotion in the bullpen. You see, or it's not bullpen, in the dugout there, and he's doing great things. I mean, they really love what he does. And I mean, you talked about off the mound. You got J-Happ that's got 5 wins. You've got Marcus, the sausage king of Toronto, Stroman, that can't get a win, and now he's on the DL. I mean, just you need to start putting them together. You know what I mean? And you need to. I think once you get that loving feeling of how a win feels, then you're going to start building that emotion up again. And I think playing the Mets, who, I mean, They took out Thor last night, and I mean 12-1 was a huge game, and it was winning by committee. Beginning of the year, I mean, you don't have Tulo, you don't have Donaldson. Donaldson's shoulder is still not up to par. I mean, he throws like a grade 12 kid out there. He doesn't have the whip out of it from third base, and I mean, you gotta take care of these players. And these players got to start taking care of themselves, or this season will end up fast and short, and they'll be out of a playoff run.
Well, you talk about winning committee. In that 12-1 win this afternoon, 6 different hitters for the Blue Jays had at least 2 hits. That is the definition, literally, of winning by committee. And Marcus Stroman, I want to talk about him a little bit because I know it's easy for me to say this because he's pitching horrible. Now he's on the DL. But, I haven't really been a fan of Marcus Stroman since day one. Not that I don't think he's a good pitcher, but I think the Blue Jays should have got rid of him when they could have got something. Now you're not going to get a whole lot because he hasn't won a game this season. He's on the DL. He pitches pretty bad every single time out. Last time he pitched, they lost 5-0. Granted, no runs were scored, so he would have to been, perfect to, get a no decision in that one. But Marcus Stroman, he's really just not cutting out in Toronto, and he's got to start getting back. I don't know what he's got to do, more bullpen sessions or whatever it is, but he's just not where he needs to be right now for the Toronto Blue Jays to have success when he's on the mound once every 5 nights.
Marcus Stroman, he puts his emotion on his sleeve, and he throws with his right hand on the same side. And I think for Marcus Stroman, he has to just focus on playing the game rather than what he says and what kind of commotion he's about to stir up. I mean, you look at what, I believe it was Marco Estrada that had so much trouble with blisters on his fingers, or who was the other Blue Jays bullpenner that who basically didn't play last year because he just didn't have the finger strength or blisters all over his fingers. Now he's come back, and he's starting to pitch fairly well. He's staying off the DL, which is great. But Marcus has to stop thinking with his head and start, rosebud to the front, big guy, if you know what I mean, and just huck the ball. Don't think, just throw.
So with that being said, what do the Toronto Blue Jays do with him when he does get healthy? Like, I'm sure he's going to be back in the lineup like nothing happened, but how long do you let him struggle? Like, how long do you let him pitch poorly on the mound before you make a move or, put him in the bullpen or, make him miss a couple starts? Like, how long do you let him be mediocre before you make a finally do something about it?
Well, I think before he comes back to the Blue Jays organization, I think he's going to get put down to the majors. He'll be put in AAA for assignments for a couple of weeks, or at least a week, get a couple starts, get himself back in the groove. And, I mean, the psyche of a pitcher is much like a goaltender in hockey, where you have to make sure that it's strong and complete. And, I mean, if he's a little fragile right now, he has to just learn to say, hey, you know what? Our job is to pitch the ball. Our job is to get strikes. Our job is to get ground balls, not home runs. and he needs to be given that lesson simply and correctly from his coaching staff. He has a wonderful talent. He throws the ball extremely well. Right now, it's just not finding the right places, and he's getting lit up like a Christmas tree in the middle of June.
And really, what Toronto Blue Jays starter isn't. You talk about a championship team, and offensively, sure, they can hit the ball. Obviously, they scored 12 runs this afternoon against the New York Mets. But you look at their pitching staff, Jaime Garcia, 2-3 with a 6.28 earned run average. Then you look at, some of the other pitchers, Joe Biagini, 0-2, a 7.98 earned run average. That's just not good enough. Marco Estrada, 2-3 with a 5.32 earned run average. Those are three of your starters out of your five that have been pretty dismal. The only really good starter right now for the Toronto Blue Jays is Jay Happ, and he has 3 losses as well because the bullpen has struggled. And when Jay Happ struggles, he really struggles. He can be really good, but when he's not on, he is not on. I know you could say that about pretty much anybody, but more specifically, when Happ isn't on, he's not on. And really nobody in this rotation for the Blue Jays other than him has been on. So how does this team make the playoffs, try and make a push in the wild card? Because the AL East is out of the question. How do they make a push to try and get into the postseason and have a run at the World Series?
Well, I think you're missing the key ingredient is closing these games in the last 2 weeks with the omission of Roberto Osuna. I mean,
that's a tough situation. I mean,
we haven't even touched that one, Darnell. And I think the kicker to that is, here's a guy that's being put on administrative leave for the 21st of May now, and he's not going to see a court date till June the 8th. And that's, quite frankly, almost that's 5 weeks of your season, basically having your starter on the bench. And Roberto Osuna was lights out in April, pitching very well, a lot of saves. I think he was 9 of 11. And you talk about your stats. The guy was on point when it came time for them to shut down games. Osuna was that guy that was shutting them down. But now nobody's really picked the roll-up, and nobody can pick the roll-up because the Blue Jays aren't in that position where they're up 1 or 2 runs. They're always playing from down low, or they've got 9-run leads. So, the bullpen in the middle is doing okay. The starters are trying their best. They're not throwing their best stuff, and they're getting caught. And that's why they've lost 6 of the last 7 series thus far that they've played.
Now, just taking a look at where they are right now with their players, and they just sent down Gurriel, picked up Urania, but 22-21, a 5.12 winning percentage, 4-6 in their last 10. Like I said, well out of the American League East behind the Yankees. And then you look at the wild card teams, the Boston Red Sox 28-14, 1 game behind the New York Yankees, and then the LA Angels 25-17, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani. The Toronto Blue Jays are 3.5 games out of a wild card spot right now, chasing Mike Trout and the LA Angels. How are they going to get back in this? You got to think you got to go on some sort of a winning streak soon here because you can't get too far back when the season gets later. Your pitchers start getting tired, all that sorts of things, 100 games down the road. You got to think you got to go, on some sort of winning streak very shortly here if you're the Blue Jays and you want to have a chance to get into the playoffs.
Well, you're trying to keep on the same pace as them Yankees, and the Yankees have lost 2 in the last infinity at home. And we knew from the beginning of the year the only question mark was behind the bench in their new manager. They have so much power around home plate. They have great fielding. Aaron Judge has proved to be a great right fielder for the Yankees, playing outstanding ball. And, the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to go toe for toe with winning the AL or at least winning the wild card. You got to keep pace with those 2 teams in your division. The Angels have a good chance. I think they're the ones that are going to win that AL West. They've got some great power now that Robinson Cano. He was on the DL, but he's not returning anytime soon. We'll get to him maybe later. But I love the way the Angels are playing ball. They've got some great young talent. In Trout, we trust in LA. I did not expect the Dodgers to be 7 games out of 500. Their worst start since 1958, and they've got a phenomenal bullpen, and they're not doing very well. So, look at the Blue Jays. Their job is to keep pace. And if they don't, you're absolutely right. Win streaks are going to help out tremendously. I think not having the left side of the infield secure with Donaldson and Tulo out, in. Pilar is your staple at center field. We haven't seen a lot of smoke coming out of Smoke's bat as yet, but maybe he's got to wake up come June as well.
Well, I want to wrap up the show today, the First Row Sports Show, brought to you by Pass the Pop, 215 Main Street North in Dauphin. Pick up a pop if you're local tonight before the Jets game. I want to finish with the Seattle Mariners. Well, I guess the Seattle Mariners list Robinson Cano, 24-17, a half a game out of the American League wild card. Robinson Cano suspended for 80 games for taking performance-enhancing drugs. A big hole Seattle now has to fit. Potential Hall of Fame career. Who knows now anymore after, this 80-game suspension, but how much does this hurt the Seattle Mariners' chances of making a push to get into the World Series playoffs? Like, he's a fantastic player, not only defensively, but he makes some pretty clutch hits up there in the batter's box.
When New York lost him about 5 years ago, batting from that right side and his quick little hip stance, they could hit the ball out of the yard. They missed something big on Robinson Cano, and Seattle got a great player. Paid for him, but they got a great player. Having that said, though, he's sitting on the DL right now, and with a broken bone in one of his hands. I personally agree with Steve Phillips that, Steve Phillips went on the air yesterday saying his suspension should not start immediately. It should start, I think, when he's activated off the DL. Because sure, he's going to miss 5 weeks with a busted hand. That's 35, 40 games. He'll still potentially be able to play the last 25 or 30 of this season. Whereas if he were not to have his suspension started until he became activated off the DL, then he'd probably miss, if not all of it, certainly way more of the season, should that happen in that way. So, for Seattle, it's a massive hole. He's only batting .285. Still pretty decent. He wasn't in his 330s like he normally is, but he hits the ball extremely well, and he is very clutch for Seattle. Pitching staff, King Henry and Paxton are doing pretty well. They've got a lot of work to do in Seattle now, and if they're going to maintain the same kind of pace as LA and Angels, that's going to be hard for them to do without Cano in the lineup.
Let me tell you what, I'll take a 285 Robinson Cano and his defensive side any day of the week. If I make a team, I'm taking a 285 Robinson Cano. Theo, thank you so much for joining the First Row Sports Show. It's been a pleasure, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Well, it's been great to talk to you. Have fun tonight watching the game.
It's going to be a thrill. I can't wait for it. Go Winnipeg! Although I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to win. The First Row Sports Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, head to our Facebook page, the First Row Sports Show Facebook page. Obviously, like it, share it, get ready for the monthly draw, and of course, Trivia Tuesday. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the First Row Sports Show. Check us out on Twitter at First Row Sports Zero and Facebook. Follow the guys on Twitter at It's the Duffy One